not know who the importers are. We really don't have the, we have the gatekeepers who are, being threatened with impeachment. But at the end of the day, we really don't have the barons' names, and the importers are there. Isn't there paper trail? Let me start with you, Honorable Kembi, because as a lawyer, I would imagine there must be a very clear path that we can use to find out, first of all, who brought in the sugar, and who is it that is responsible for it?
You see, these parliamentary reports are very interesting because, and I've been a member of parliament twice, and I've been a member of these committees, and the manipulation when it comes, some people may not even know, right? But the leaders of these committees always will most likely know where the manipulation is coming from and what is happening, and if there is what I read these days to be called rent seeking, people would also know. Incidentally, I think it's important for me to mention that for the time I was in Parliament, the first 5 years and then the last 5 years, and although I was in the Public Accounts Committee of National Assembly in the 9th Parliament, I understand people were bribed to make certain reports. But I can say here clearly this morning that before God, that nobody ever approached me to give me a bribe.
You as an individual? As
an individual, but I was not a chairman. I was just a member of the Public Accounts Committee. Mm-hmm. I hear people are compromised, but nobody tried to compromise me. That I can say here with a clear conscience. Okay. So I'm sure they target certain people. Mm-hmm. Maybe the people. But do you think it actually happens? It must. I mean, this rent-seeking thing cannot be for nothing. That we about it every day, and this sugar thing is big, yeah. And we saw a report being taken to the National Assembly, and even the Speaker himself, Justin Muturi, saying it was a nonsense report and sending it back and telling them off. We saw how the members of Parliament, the members of the committee, were excited, when they were dealing with the Solai Dam proprietors, when they were dealing with the sugar barons and other people like those. So maybe I'm sure there is some truth in this rent-seeking thing. But I may not agree a lot with Gladys Wanga on general things, but on this one I agree with her 100%. I agree with Gladys Wanga 100%. You see, Rotich and Eden, the CSs, is going to catch up with them if they allowed for sugar to be imported outside the law or regulations. It's going to catch up with them, and Parliament is going to deal with them, and the impeachment motions could work, or even the president himself could decide that this is a baggage, yeah, because I'm sure he wants the best for the country. All that could happen. But you see, whether Rotich allowed sugar to be imported irregularly or not, I'm sure he did not authorize that there should also be mercury in that sugar or copper. So the people who imported the sugar, the barons, the people who actually imported the sugar, and we've never actually been told clearly whether there was how much sugar, how much mercury, copper, and other metals were in that sugar. The people who brought in that sugar, whether it was due to handling or mishandling of the sugar and it was being shipped here, whether it was substandard from the time it left the place it was imported from, people must take responsibility. So I'm surprised that, as you are really, that nobody has talked about the barons, the people. The whole thing could be a whitewash. We could be talking about Rotich and Eden, and then forget about the barons, and everything could be washed away. I think we need to be very vigilant, because when this thing goes to Parliament now, and they start talking about the impeachment of this or the other one, the bigger picture may be lost. That Kenyans were put to risk of cancer and other risks, and still at risk because we still don't have, and because they at least, and we still do not know where that sugar is. We have not seen it incinerated. We have not seen it destroyed. We don't know where this sugar is. The last time I heard, some of it was found in the army barracks in Italy. Yeah, so our army may have been again affected by consumption of this sugar. So we could lose the bigger picture in the whole of all these things. I don't know to say that this Didmas Barasa, I think that is his name, is hoodwinking us. I hope he is doing what he is doing out of conviction. I hope he is not going to miss in action on the relevant, like you have seen happen in the past. I hope he is not doing this so that he can maybe be sought after by whoever is trying to impeach with a view to gaining personal gain. I hope not. I hope that he is doing what he is doing because he believes in what he is doing. But we cannot afford to lose sight of the fact that we were told by Matiang'i himself and the DCI cannot that the sugar which initially was found had mercury and copper in it. We have not been told since then what happened or where the sugar is or when it will be destroyed.
Okay.
So to answer your question, yes, the barons, it would be nonsense. It would be a nonsense report if it only indicts this or the other, but not the people who actually then brought that sugar illegally into this country.
Honorable Kipruto Arap Kiro, you've also been a member of parliament, and help us understand why from this side, when we look at the report, we can poke holes very easily. When the committee that is tasked with this, literally representing the whole country, to give us a report, brings a report that is shoddy, how would they live with themselves? What are we really dealing with here? Are we dealing with people who are honest and want to have this resolved? Or is it just a report for the sake of having a report, and at the end of the day, the barons and those who are responsible and should be culpable go scot-free?
Well, allow me to dissect the issue in two ways. One, to say that the sugar that was imported illegally, we may not be able to trace who are the importers. We may not be able to trace. And if that is what is laced with mercury, then CS Adan may get scot-free. But the sugar that was imported legally, therefore Adan must be held responsible, because KEBS should have, of necessity, inspected and confirmed that the sugar meets the threshold for human consumption. So those are the two issues that we need to look at. On the third issue of sugar, I do not see three CSS sitting together deciding on so much sugar to be imported that is in excess of the national quota that we do import, which is 1/3 of the total consumption, which meets the deficit component, without an authority above that. And that may explain the confusion that you see in Parliament, where there is an office beyond the three CSS that is telling the members of Parliament, please, this report must be done in this particular manner for purposes of ensuring the government is covered.
Surely, as the CS, he is, or they are responsible for that ministry.
Yes.
We agree on that.
Yes.
Which office is this that we keep referring to that seems amorphous, that none of us seem to understand?
What I'm saying
is above.
You know, the government is big, and there are two people above the ministers, the president and the deputy.
So are we...
So it can be somewhere in between. I'm saying I cannot see three CSS sitting down. I was in that Ministry of Agriculture for 5 years. And before you make a decision, there was some kind of consultation within government. And let us also hear, was there a cabinet meeting to sanction the importation of sugar in excess of the amount that is required? If yes, then the entire government is held responsible. When you come to the members of Parliament, I do not want to cast aspersion on them, but the body language of many of these guys is very clear.
It's wanting.
Either they are seeking rent or they are seeking attention from the authority. Because this Parliament, just like many others that have come before, including some of the parliaments that I attended, at times they are not totally independent. They are dependent on the executive. And today, the leader of official government business or majority, both in the Senate and in the National Assembly, are not totally independent of the executive.
Okay. Honorable Kembi, are these people then we can trust? Because if there's an office above the CSs that we are somehow shy to mention, and it's clear they have been mandated to do that, then should they be the scapegoat? Because at the end of the day, if there is an office that is, let's say, operating that whole sugar issue, even if we remove the CS, we've not dealt with the problem.
Yeah, but then we're making assumptions, are we not? Because unless and until they tell us that they're instructed by somebody else, the buck stops with them.
With them.
Yeah, because they're the ones who are entrusted with this, with trade and also with the treasury. So they cannot come and tell us that, for instance, in Ruaraka land, I was instructed to pay. Unless they tell us who gave the instructions, then they must appreciate that the buck stops with them, and they're the ones who are going to have to face the music. And there cannot be any two ways about it. Yeah.
So what do you suggest now from where you're seated as the way forward? Should impeachment be the way forward? Because there are those members of parliament who have said that these two are culpable, they are responsible, and we should just do away with them.
First of all, that report must be debated and accepted or rejected. Now I hear they want to amend it. You know, when these reports are made and the chairman signs them, and then the committee member signs them, then they own that report. And a chairman cannot come now and tell us that the clerks inserted certain words into that report. Because as a diligent person, as a chairman of the committee, it stops with you. If you made a recommendation, for instance, that the CS should take personal responsibility and resign, and then now it is said, the final report is coming to say that the CS should be investigated. Those are two very different things. Very different things. And a chairman of that committee, or the two chairmen of that joint committee, cannot come and tell us now that they were manipulated by a clerk. Yeah? Because the clerk is under the jurisdiction of the clerk to the National Assembly. Because these are junior officers. These are clerks, very clever people. They are the ones who actually draft these reports, but they cannot make it what they want to say without the approval of the committee itself. So I do not accept when the chairman comes and tells us that Kenyans should believe that they did not know that there was that change.
Okay, and that now brings me to the point where we seem to be dealing with something that, as the gallery, if we call the electorate as a gallery, there seems to be no end to this debate. Honorable Kirwa, there seems to be a deliberate attempt to make sure that this report, it has even been called doctored by members of parliament, but they seem helpless.
Yes, I want to pick where Mheshimiwa Kembi has just left. The issue is that the chairman is responsible. No committee report will go to parliament without their signature. And therefore they signed on what they knew they had accepted. And no clerk can supersede the chairman. Now, number two, sugar, like drugs and oil, are very complicated commodities. And therefore, I have a feeling that at the end of the day, it is what the executive wants that will prevail. Because I know the president today knows better than we do the truth about sugar. And therefore, the CSs should not even go to the floor of parliament. They should have been relieved if the president knows the truth about that. And if he knows the truth and is hiding, then he's also making himself to look like he's part and parcel of this importation. Because how can a government import sugar that is almost in excess of the normal quota, almost 4 times what we expected, and say that they do not know? It means there was a scheme to flood the market with a lot of imported sugar, and everybody knew.
What would you expect the president to do?
To fire the ministers.
Okay.
Yeah, he does not need really to go through these motions in parliament because he can take the initiative, the way he transferred Aden to East Africa and brought back Mheshimiwa Munya. He still got the leeway to do that.
Okay, and you won't again be the same people who are going to accuse him of again becoming heavy-handed and not waiting for due process?
No, he knows the truth. You know, by the time you go, even he knows which members of parliament have been compromised. He knows which minister was compromised. He knows which minister slept on the job, especially the issue of heavy metals in sugar. If it came through the normal channel, Aden should have taken responsibility long ago.
Okay. Honorable Gitura, do you agree that the president by now, if he has all this info, should have already taken action? In other words, the back actually stops with him.
The back always stops with the president. But you see that the reason the constitution is written the way it is, because in the old constitution, parliament didn't have the power to impeach ministers or cabinet secretaries. But in the current constitution, because they are vetted by parliament, by National Assembly to be more correct, then that same National Assembly can sack you or impeach you if the president doesn't do it. You see? So there are it's two-pronged now. Does the president know about these things? I don't know. Kipruto Rapkiro has been a cabinet secretary, minister I haven't been. I was his assistant minister in agriculture. So I don't, maybe he knows things I don't know. because he sat in that cabinet. I don't know whether or not the president knows about the truth about the sugar, or he is still waiting to get information either from DCI or for for NIS or from Parliament. But because Parliament has that window also, if Didmas Baraza motion passes of impeachment, then it leaves the president with no option but to relieve Rotich
of his duties
and Aden. So it is two-pronged. I don't want to pass blame myself. I don't know what I don't know. I don't know. All I can say is that yes, all these are possibilities. The president is convinced that he's having baggage. He has every right to release or relieve them, the CSs, of their duties, and appoint and nominate other people for vetting to join his cabinet.
Okay, but does that leave you worried with the fact that we have a committee that has been representing the people, but yet the report that they bring is compromised? Meaning, even if even if the president relieved the two CSs of their duty, we still have people within Parliament that really are not there to represent the people. They're there for their own benefit.
It is true. It's actually very unfortunate that a committee. See, when this joint committee of agriculture, I think, and trade was formed to make a report on sugar, we all had hope that because these are people's representatives, they'll do what is best in the interest of the people they represent. And that's why we have committees. But when you had the first report come to Parliament, it was quite obvious that something very wrong had happened. Now, the second report is here. We are reading that it is doctored. And I don't know whether you can call this doctoring, but when it goes to Parliament, members will have a right to amend it further, to make certain recommendations, and most likely what we shall see are recommendations, if they are serious, are recommendations asking certain cabinet secretaries to take personal responsibility and quit, and maybe requesting the president to relieve them, or then following the Didmas Baraza route of impeaching them. These are all possibilities. These are things that could happen. And that is why all of us are very anxiously waiting to see what is going to happen in Parliament, and also to see what His Excellency the President may decide to do in all these circumstances.
Okay, and we'll wait and see how that goes. But let's look at something else, and I'll come to you, Honorable Kirwa. And this is Jubilee members saying that Raila's, getting into government and the handshake basically is rocking the boat in Jubilee. First of all, let's start with your thoughts on that, because there seems to have been a plan by Jubilee, and they've made this clear, it's not in secret, that they had a 20-year plan with Uhuru Kenyatta doing 10 years, with Ruto doing another 10 years, but Raila's handshake with Uhuru seems to be a spanner in the works.
Well, first of all, I hope they consulted the Almighty God that 20 years is a possibility between two individuals, because every election is unique in itself. Even when we signed the MOU as NAC, the 8 of us in the summit, we do not know that at the end of the period, 2 of the summit members were passed on. The late Wamalwa passed on, and therefore destroyed the configuration that we had initially. So to talk of 20 years and assume, possibly because they are young, they assume they will be around for 20 years and they will be able to support each other. And it's also an insult to the rest of Kenyans. It cannot be seen that the Kikuyu and Kalenjin can take us to ransom, that for 20 years we are going to hold the helm of the nation. It is like we are not going to consult other Kenyans.
But why does it have to be the Kikuyu and the Kalenjin?
Because
couldn't that just be looked at leaders with their own merit?
But they mentioned the names. One is a Kalenjin, one is a Kikuyu.
That is true. That is
Jubilee,
true. But does that disqualify them just by virtue of the fact that
they are not disqualified? They are not disqualified, but they cannot be presumptuous that the rest of Kenyans don't want to lead this nation.
But if they are available, if they are able, if Kenyans give them the right to do that, do we have to have the names pop up and say Kikuyu or Kalenjin?
But when you talk of 2 names, which other tribe do you give them? They are very clear. Uhuru is a Kikuyu, Ruto is a Kalenjin. Can they change in between? The issue is, and this is the problem with Africa, it's not Kenya alone, but Kenya, it is something where the rain started beating us. We are not electing tribes. We are electing individuals capable of running a certain office. Tanzania did better. For the first 4 presidents, they came from small tribes. Here in Kenya, it is coalition of tribes or coalition of individuals ostensibly to make sure that they got their interests. What interest do they have?
But Honorable Kipruto, you're a politician. You're
Yes.
one of those who we would say, galvanizing people around tribes. For instance, now if we look at ANC, it has been said that it is a Luya, association of people.
But it happens that, fortunately, I'm not a lawyer.
But
I'm in
is you.
ANC.
And that is you.
Yeah, that is me. That's my independence. And that's why I'm still saying you can conceivably abuse the intelligence of Kenyans that for 20 years we are going to be in this bandwagon, destined to nowhere. Just because of, I come from this tribe, you come from the other tribe. You rode in the same bus for 10 years. Now the bus has stopped. You are supposed to disembark and other passengers get in.
Get into the bus.
Yes, and if they still feel that, well, so be it. Now, let's come back to the issue. I do not think those of us in NASA are interested in joining government. We are not interested in joining Jubilee. Jubilee is not big enough for all the parties in NASA and the associated parties to get into Jubilee. It will burst. So the issue is, we said we are supporting the president on 2 items. And this is what I understand about the MOU. 1, genuine national integration cohesion. 2, effective reforms to create a landscape that whoever wins shall be declared the winner. 2 things. If you can achieve that, the rest of the things will come in place. And whoever wins the presidency does not have to be from this tribe or the other, as long as he's a Kenyan of integrity, a Kenyan who has the requisite capacity to run the affairs of this nation.
All right, Honorable Gitura, your thoughts on Raila being basically spoiling the party, as it were,
Maybe
for the
he
20-year
is.
plan?
Maybe, I don't know, but it depends on which side you're looking from. Whose party is destroying? Because these are personal interests. The people who are talking about Raila destroying the party have their own personal interests and their own projections. But I think what Raila has done in having a handshake with the president is very important. I watched Musalia Mudavadi doing his interview the other day. I think it was on NTV. It was a very good interview. I liked it very much. I liked the way he was looking at things. But he respects, and he quoted widely, he talked about Jeremy Corbyn of the Labour Party in the UK. He talked about a lot of other comparables and situations where the opposition does not just oppose the government for the sake of it. If you look at the Republicans during the Obama rule in America, there are lots of times that he even invited the Speaker of the Senate and other senior people to sit with them in the Republican, to talk with them and see what they could do best for America. So this happens everywhere in the world. But personal interests also take a lot of toll on nationhood. I support the handshake, personally. It has brought peace and tranquility, and we must build on it. The people talking very loudly are people who had their own story, what they thought they were going to achieve. Now they can see that it's changing. Remember that the 20-year plan was a plan. It is not cast in stone.
Right.
That is what their own views. But the Kenyan voter, the member of parliament, has only one vote at the end of the day. So when they keep going around the country and saying, oh, we have decided this, we are going, the whole of this region is going to behave this way, it's balderdash, if you ask me. Because at the end of the day, they are elected to go to parliament and do what is best for the country, not to go campaigning on behalf of the people and saying that over and above sending me to parliament, I'm also binding you. That my decision is your decision. So my personal interests prevail against yours. That's why I'm telling you that we have decided we are going to elect so-and-so come 2022. I mean, that is taking Kenyans for granted. Because in that event, then there'll be no point of having elections. We can then as well have the members of parliament say, if you are a member of parliament for constituency A, that you also have the vote for everybody. Yeah, so that you just go to parliament and then you vote for the president, as because you are representatives. And that to be total negation of our constitutional rights, to be total foolishness.
All right. Gentlemen, we'll need to wind up, and I'll need your closing comments, Honorable Kipruto. And as we get your closing comments, what advice do you have to Kenyans, given that right now there are those who see the opposition as compromised, as one that is working with government? Maybe, like one of our panelists said the other day, Kenyans are so used to violence that when now we have a formal and reasonable way of sitting down to oppose, we're not used to it. What would you advise to Kenyans, in regards especially to the opposition?
Well, first of all, I think the opposition were still where we were in terms of holding government to account. Number two, it is also clear that even members of parliament, even from Jubilee, are supposed to be the oversight authority on behalf of the people of Kenya. And therefore, they still got a role to play, and Kenyans should not lose hope. What we need to do is to re-engineer our politics and go forward. I think we had a lot of bad manners in the political atmosphere, that when bad manners now runs out of town, we seem to see each other differently from what it was. The opposition is still intact, and we are likely to be with this government for the next 4 years.
All right. Honorable Kembi Gitura, your closing comments?
My closing comments are that we are going through very interesting times in our country. And I'm very anxiously looking into seeing what is going to happen. Some of us have always been crusaders against corruption. And we've talked about it at every opportunity, and we've made enemies. Because when you talk about against corruption, then you are stepping on people's toes because they thrive on corruption and they think you are stopping their food chain. So I'm very happy about what is going on in the country today. I'm very happy to see that the handshake is actually helping the fight against corruption, because I've not had since March, when the 9th, when the handshake took effect, I've not heard anybody saying it, that's our people who are being persecuted. Remember, it was everybody used to say, oh, it is our people, Kembi Gitura has been charged, oh, it's our people who are being persecuted, he has done nothing wrong. I kept telling people that nobody steals for you. They steal for themselves, for their wives, and their children. It's only when they are caught that you know they stole. If you are not caught, you would not know.
And you'll not benefit.
Of course you don't benefit, but when they are caught, they want now to make you part and parcel of their thieving, as if you had gone to war and then you have brought war spoils to them. So I'm very happy about what's going on in our country at the moment, but what I want to ask is that let it be sustained. Let it be done without fear or favor. If houses have to be demolished because they're on riparian, let it not be that that house belongs to so-and-so and this one belongs to so-and-so. Let it be brought down because it's on riparian land. If it's in Kariobangi South and it does not meet the standards and it looks like it's going to collapse, let it be brought down. But let there be no fear, no favor. Let it be done because it's the right thing to do. And then Kenyans will start seeing, yes, it is possible. We can have a country going forward that is free of all these things, that therefore is going to develop that much faster.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Honorable Kembi Gitura and Honorable Kipruto Arap Kiro for joining us this morning on the State of the Nation. It's now 26 minutes to 8. We're going to take a short break, but do stay with us. We've got more stories making headlines. Also later on, we'll be looking at how technology has influenced the banking sector. And more importantly, how does that affect you and how does that affect the job market? That's all lined up right here on Morning Express. So we take that break. On the other side of the break, more stories making headlines.